question while we're waiting. What is the terminology for this box? That was never explained to me what a box is.
That it was referring to the portion of the ICS 213. And so, yeah, that's understandable.
So right there, one of those boxes?
Yes, it should be box 2 or box 3, box 4 for the subject. Box 6 is the time. So that's what it is to, and you don't have any experience with the 213. That's something that we'll have to work on with you, and Charlie is saying same thing, and try to get some training in on that. But that just lets the person on the other end know where you're at and what you're talking about.
I got it.
Some organizations, they won't say box, they'll say numeral 3, decimal, and then they'll go and say what it is. That takes more time, but I think everybody was able to understand well by going to box 2, EOC, box 3, who it's from, and so forth on that.
Hey, while you're talking about forms, my question is, okay, I've completed the ICS 213s. During a real emergency, who gets these forms and how? I can't imagine during an ice storm that I'm going to be delivering these to somebody in a physical form like this. So how does that happen?
Be honest, they will take those in a physical form. And so we're to save those and put them aside and save it, because the city will collect all forms and they will give those to FEMA, or they will share with FEMA or something, like probably months after the incident. So best thing to do is just to save those things. For our exercise, we don't need to save them. Of course, many of you know Northeast District had a problem again. So I got to take my multimeter and go up there, and we have set up at the Northeast, we got a radio, a Kenwood radio set up for the VHF, solely for the VHF for the EOC. And then we had another radio, same brand, Kenwood, set up for UHF, and they each have dual windows. Well, when I set the system up this morning, the VHF radio would not power up, no power at all. So I'm trying to troubleshoot replacing the red and black cables that plug into the back, trying to figure out what. And I didn't have time, but I was able to, on the second radio, be able to have both VHF and UHF in that one radio in the different windows. I could hear, but I could not transmit from that radio. So I was using my handheld, my little Baofeng with a whip. So it worked well. I think it worked well with Jim and Mike and Chris. I think they were able to hear me on my handheld, and I could hear them well, but I could not. I tried to talk to Matt, and he was coming in very unreadable, very scratchy and unreadable. A lot of distortion. So. But I could hear everybody else. I heard Gary coming in loud and clear. I heard Jerry coming in loud and clear. Great. I could hear, I think it was Scott all the way down at Southeast 1. And actually I heard somebody from Southeast 3 that was a neighborhood ham. I didn't even know we had any hams in Southeast 3, but so there was a ham operator that was a neighborhood ham that connected with Matt's on the VHF frequency. So yeah, I could hear well, other than I couldn't hear Matt.
But what was Karen's question? Where do we come up with a bunch of blank forms in an unexpected emergency? Was that your question?
No, my question was your completed forms.
Oh, the
in a
completed forms.
real-life
Okay, sorry.
emergency.
Sorry, I
Right.
misunderstood.
Yes, and so Andy made that clear that yes, we hang on to them, and eventually
Okay.
the city will collect them when it's,
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood that.
when the bobsled and the team can get through, during the storms or whatnot.
And I didn't hear Evan at all on the 441 at all. I don't know if you had low power Evan or what, but I could hear.
Yeah, I
Jim
was running low power and just, I didn't want to interfere.
Okay.
So,
Okay, I got you. So I was wondering, I could hear Jim call and talking to you, but I couldn't hear you at all. So, but it was quite hectic, at least on my end. So trying to figure out and also trying to do a little troubleshooting, but for some reason I ended up with, I got 3 messages from Harlow, and I got 3 messages from Chris, which that's what he's supposed to have. And I got 3 messages from Russet through Mike, but somehow I got 6 messages from Lariette, from Judy. So
I actually wasn't able to transmit one of the messages to Mike. We never got back in touch because he was doing higher priority things.
okay. All right. But I was, because I know Judy, I just gave her 3, but somehow I got 6 messages with Lariette on it. So
I don't know.
anyway, who else is here? Who's Ken? I'm trying to figure out who these other people have. Thea, did you guys y'all get some pictures taken in Southeast too?
We got some, they weren't active, they were all sitting. But we were actively sitting.
I don't know if they want pictures of people sitting, but okay. Let's see. Anybody else have any comments? How did it go in your, I heard that Jerry said that Santa Clara kind of put all their 3 into one message.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, she autonomously decided to do that and then was not even listening on the UHF frequency. So you had to call her on the phone to tell her, hey, I'm responding to you. She thought she had to go to the VHF frequency. She didn't get the whole concept of the hierarchy.
Okay, all right. Well, that's something we'll have to work on for October. Let's see. Bill, how'd you guys do at Lake Ridge in your runner? Bill, down at Lake Ridge, they had to put in a running system, use runners. How did that work out?
Well, the runner was me and I walked.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm only a little over half a mile from where Chris was, so it was not a problem at all. And in fact, we had good radio contact.
Really?
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. So,
FRS wise?
Yep.
From your location to Chris?
Yes.
I had a hard time hearing him sometimes, but it worked out.
Well, that's cool. Well, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, I was very, very pleased, surprised and pleased. And of course, the internal communication among our folks here, the team that I've got put together, was excellent. There was no problem there at all. Of course, that's all short range.
Cool, awesome. Well, hopefully we'll figure out about Applewood and get them back in the mix of things. Gary, how did Southeast 2 go?
It went pretty well, and I did talk to Jim W7EZN, who was doing this Southeast 3. He is just kind of following along because he doesn't have anybody else in his neighborhood involved with this. But
who's that in Southeast 3?
Jim W7EZN, he's the guy you heard probably checking in with with EOC.
I thought Jim was in Southeast too. I didn't know that.
No, he's
Okay,
in,
so-
he's in 3. He's just a little ways out of 2.
If he's in 3, man, he could be the net control for 3. And I heard a female voice come over on as a neighborhood ham out of 3. So that means there's another ham in Southeast 3. Huh. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I remember hearing a woman too, but they didn't catch where she was.
Yeah, I heard she was telling Matt that she was a neighborhood ham in Southeast 3.
Yeah, Southeast 3, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's cool. All right, well, good. That's
I don't
good to
know
know.
her.
Susan, how'd you do with your relaying?
Well, apparently not well if 2 of my 3 messages turned into 6 messages. And the third I didn't even get to give to Mike. So I apparently need to clarify, that I'm still on the first individual to make sure that it doesn't get broken up like that. I'm not sure. So how to do that. I feel like a fish out of water today. So,
Well, in October, we'll give you some things that you can make an ICS message. And we're going to be bringing Stephen Myers in as the Cal Young ham. And so that way you'll be a baby damage assessment team beginning for your area. We'll kind of do some training on that part.
so I never got to transmit the third incident from Lariat to Mike.
Yeah.
He said to stand by, and I was standing by, and I thought I'll try one more time, but he must have stopped
I gotcha.
the procedure, the program, or whatever you call this.
Andy, I misspoke. The Jim is actually in Southeast 2 Jefferson neighborhood, but he doesn't have anybody else in the neighborhood.
I thought he was in Southeast too. So, okay. Yeah, I thought he was, but I only heard that one lady that was in Southeast 3. Yeah, Jerry, you're muted.
Sorry. No, I'm not. So I came up with an interesting idea, and maybe we could use it in the whole city. So for numbering messages, I say we go district, neighborhood, and then 3 digits. So for instance, we have NWSC 001, Northwest Santa Clara 001. If River Road was active, it would be NWRR 001. And that'll help keep the messages, understood by everybody.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. That was good. I was numbering. I had like NE1 and NE2, and then I had Cal Young, or I had Lake Ridge and things like that, or TE for Twin Elms. But I didn't like my numbering system. It was kind of funky, but I like that. That's a good way.
Yes.
On that. Let's see, who else? Let's see, we got Ken. Anybody from Lake Ridge? You got any comments? Joanna? Chuck?
I have a comment, Andy.
Yes, Joanna.
I was neighborhood net control, and I talked with Sean, who was the God, I never remember what he is. The what?
He was with Whitaker.
He was the team leader.
Yeah.
And he did a good job of reporting incidents to me, but we had interference from a kid who thought it was hilarious to be playing music and loud noises, et cetera, et cetera. And what finally occurred to me was that in advance of this exercises, I should have realized and remembered that we need to be aware of the alternate frequency to switch to. And during this exercise, number one, I didn't have that with me until afterwards. And number two, because Sean is so new to this, I don't know that he would have been aware how to switch his FRS radio to that frequency. So we need to have some training in that.
Yes, you're right, Joanna, and more training. That's something that you guys could do. And I think it's you can look on there. I think it ICS form 205. I do believe that's the form. 205 is kind of like a COM form that shows all the different channels that you're using. So you could set up like your FRS channel, your main one is channel whatever, and your alternate is this. It would probably be good that everybody in the district would have this handy at their radio station. All radio team people have this available, so that instant like Joanna's talking about, all Joanna would have to say was, let's go to our alternate channel. Not actually say what it is, just go to our alternate channel.
Right.
Everybody then would have that 205 and they could look over and say, oh, here's my alternate channel, and then go to that. Yeah, that's something that we need to work on. Matter of fact, November's CERT training for the first Thursday is going to be a FRS training thing. And it's going to be a scenario type. And I'm going to throw in some interference in that exercise down at Second and Chambers. And so we'll see how people react. Yeah, Bill.
I don't know if this is something that you'd anticipated, but it's sort of related to what Joanna was saying. I was concerned about using channel 3 on the FRS for our local team to communicate, because we did the exercise, we spread out and so forth. That wouldn't have been good. It would have added a lot of miscellaneous traffic. So I had all of the team members go to channel 5, and I carried a spare radio on 5 so I could monitor both 5 and 3. Worked out pretty good. So just a thought. I don't know if anybody's considered that.
Right. Yeah, you can for inter-team communications, you may want to use the channels 8 through 14. They're only half watts. They're only a half a watt, and they would you know, for a close area, that's about all you need. Of course, channel 5, I'm not sure. Channel 5, I would have to refer back to the resource guide. I don't know if that is if that's over on Good Pasture, if that's channel 5 or not. I don't know. I would have to look, check that out. So
and the two that you mentioned, Andy, was that 18 and 14?
No, channels 8 through 14.
8 through 14. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're all half watts. They're all to be used for like inter-team communications between the team and stuff. Short range, very short range. So not to interfere with the channels going to the ham radio operators. Evan, how did it go down there with Quail Run? Okay.
Yeah, no, it went good with him. You know, pretty straightforward, no issues. So he and I were talking. He might, because I still can't hear from my house. I had to drive down there again.
Okay.
It'd be nice to get them to get a, you know, maybe a GMRS license and be able to put out a little bit more power, because I could communicate with Jim on FRS okay from there too. So, but you know, because in a real emergency, it doesn't make sense that I'm going to be driving over by them. So
yeah, I got you. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. Thank you. We got Ken. Let's see who else. Karen.
Yes, actually, for our disaster assessment team, since we were getting so much static, with Susan and Mike trying to talk, we switched to channel 7 just to talk amongst our team to actually do the reports. And then Stephen and I walked down to Bond Lane Park with our radios, and that's how we were able to connect with Susan on Minda. Otherwise, we
Really?
wouldn't have been able to hear each other. So that problem may be resolved when Stephen gets a better antenna now that he has his ham license again. But really, that we really couldn't hear enough to actually do transmitting and to hear. So
Yeah, I think that your location is kind of downhill.
A little bit.
A little bit. It kind of goes downhill there. So I think that would probably cause the problem like that. So on that. So anybody else have any comments? How things go? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I wanted, first of all, a thank you to Susan, who ended up doing a lot of relaying as well as her own transmission. We did have some FRS issues with the signal being sub ideal by a bit, but we did manage to get things going. And Susan, also sorry for leaving your hand hanging there. Andy and I then had problems for quite a while. We were not able to communicate, so that I had all of my, I think I had 9 items backed up to try to get to Andy. So when I was asking you to stand by, I was waiting for a chance to get through there. And actually, I think I ended up with one I guess we got them all at the end, but it was.
No, there was one that we didn't, the guy's dead.
Yeah, and I know that the one that you couldn't get to me because I kept having to have you hold because I was waiting to get upstream. So yeah, that's one of those things that it's a juggling act, and I appreciate you handling the middle of that quite funny.
Well. It's not funny, but he was dead, and you know, to begin with, and
why are you laughing?
I'm sorry. This was supposed to be fun. That's why I'm laughing. It wasn't fun though.
So how many messages got up to the EOC? Do we know that?
I was able to get only 3, and actually 2 of them I was able to get through, and then the third one I had to pass on to a relay, which I think was Scott Rosen. Down at, I think, Southeast 1. Had to go all the way down there to be relayed to Matt. So I don't know what the problem. Gary, how was Matt to you? Okay.
Yeah, everybody was loud and clear to me. I spoke a lot with Craig Cherry, N7RWB, and Matt.
So Matt's signal to you was great, huh?
Yeah, so yeah, perfectly clear. So yeah, there might be some particular thing in between you and Matt. You might look on a map and see what might be in the way there.
Do they have? I wonder if they got a kind of like a line meter, like check out line and make sure it's okay. That I don't have a.
Yeah, there's people with some antenna analyzers. We could check, make sure the coax and antenna is good. Yeah.
Yeah, because it just seems. I mean, Matt was really distorted and scratchy, and I'm thinking it showed a good signal, but audio wise, it was bad. I couldn't even make it out. So it sounds like it was on my end and not his end or anything. So, which is good to know.
Yeah, it almost sounded like your antenna was disconnected.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking. It's thinking, well, maybe there's a SWR problem or something. I don't know.
Yeah, be good to check that. So I think we had 11 messages out of friendly neighborhood that came through. It's like Gary and I were telepathically connected. It just worked great.
Yeah, I passed on 14 messages to Matt.
That's good. That's good. And I was looking at the time. I said, man, I'm running out of time. And actually 2 hours is really tough to try to get all those messages out. And it's only three messages per DAT team or 2 neighborhoods. So that's like, good golly. So if we keep adding more DAT teams, well, I guess we'll have to cut down messages. I don't know, or increase the time. Yeah, Jerry?
Yeah, so I wanted to mention about antennas. For the people that are using FRS and GMRS, don't forget that if you have a GMRS, it has the ability to use an external antenna. So I've got a mag mount on top of a cookie sheet that's sitting on top of my book. And it seems to get a lot better reception than just the little antenna on top of the handheld.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
Yep.
I see Joanna has her hand up.
Okay. Hey, Joanne.
She's being patient. Hey, Andy, I want to go back briefly to the fact that you said that there's going to be an FRS training at the fire station on a Thursday night. So question
Yes.
number one is, do you want to talk with Sean about going that, or do you want to give me date and time so I can make sure he's aware of it?
I'll have to check with the city on that, because this is the Thursday night trainings is for certs only.
Oh,
Due to the fact of insurance and being in the fire station and stuff.
Okay.
So I'll have to check with the city on that, but it's geared for cert extra training. And we were going to set up a system sort of like today, but just using FRS radios for that. It's Thursday from 6 to 8.
okay. And I don't believe he's had cert training, but I don't know
Yeah,
that.
I'm
for
not sure either. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, so
Susan?
we'll talk with Megan and see if she can work with Sean, because I don't know what her radio is and how she would go about showing Sean how to switch frequencies. I know how to do it on our radio, our FRS radios, but
Yeah, and I would encourage that each neighborhood and districts kind of step out and kind of start doing some of their in-house exercises and training. Maybe kind of get with one another and say, pick a date or something that is free during the month, and all right, let's see if we can do a mini exercise, and let's come up on our radios and news and stuff like that on that. I saw Bill's hand.
Yeah, GMRS is that's could be of interest to me. I just did a quick. I'm not familiar with it. I just did a quick check and see that they're more expensive than FRS. But if I got something like that for here at Lake Ridge, would that give me more range? Could I actually connect with someone more easily?
That gives you 5 watts, and you could probably connect radio wise a little stronger if Chris was in the parking lot up there like he was today. Yeah.
And is that going to be a permanent situation with Chris in the parking lot?
Probably not a permanent. If we get more hams, I would like to use Chris over in Chris's Meadows. But for now, I'm trying to find some more hams that could communicate with the Dale damage assessment team and the Twin Elms damage assessment teams. So that's what Chris came over to facilitate that to be their ham. But hopefully I can get another ham close by that would volunteer that would fill a spot. So,
well, let me just leave it then that if I could be of any more help by going GMRS, I'm perfectly willing to do that.
Yeah, and GMRS might be able to reach Mike. It could be possible. Yeah, Lena, I see your hand.
As far as the GMRS goes, the handhelds, you can go up to 5 watts with a handheld, and that can be helpful, but depending on how much interference it is, you still can't necessarily get through. The micro mobile units, you can get a 5 watt unit, and that does have a external antenna that you could like put on a little cookie sheet, put up on something. That helps a lot. You can also get up to, I know you can get a 15 watt as well. It's a little more powerful, but when you get up into the 15 watts, even though they share the same channels as the FRS, that one, it just totally blocks out the half watt channels. So you can't communicate on the half watt
Right.
channels with the GMRS because there's no like high low. It's just like eliminates the half watts. But on a 5 watt, you can. That
Thank you.
And I'm going to claim that you can put an external antenna on the handhelds also, Lena. So, and if you put those up high enough, it's almost as important to get a good antenna as it is power.
Yeah.
More important.
And you can get at least a 3 dB gain, or maybe even a 6 dB gain antenna. I didn't know that it was allowable to take off. Maybe if it's removable. Mine's not removable on my handheld, but.
Yeah, Craig.
Yeah, I just mentioned that not all FRS radios are created equal either. I have a GMRS Micro Mobile and some Motorola FRS radios. I never bother with the GMRS thing. I just use my Motorola FRS radios, which I think maybe have better receivers and stuff in them than the $35 Bimart ones. So you might check around a little bit before you decide what to get. The FRS is really convenient and it works great for what I'm doing in this neighborhood here.
All right, thanks, Greg. Okay, from this exercise, so what worked and what didn't work? Yeah, Chris.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gary.
So one thing, we went to we did eventually go to the alternate channel, and that was great. But Joanne and I live in the same place, so she was doing her FRS thing. We went to the alternate channel, channel 16, and I noticed we were actually hearing Northwest on channel 2 and on channel 16. So they went to the alternate because of the kid on 2. And we didn't actually end up using 16, but apparently like 2, any area that uses channel 2 always has 16 as a backup and an alternate. And I thought, well, maybe that should be mixed up a little better, because we heard Northwest on 2 and on 16.
They must have been over there at Bimart on River Road. Huh.
Yeah, we have pretty good GMRS and FRS radios. I bought them way back in 2016 before they got split up. And our radio only puts out 1.5 watts on GMRS. When I bought them, I got a $85 license for 5 years. And they can also put out half watt, but they're old radios and they don't really conform to the new FCC guidelines. But their reception is really good for an FRS radio. So
right, thank you, Chris.
I found that it was difficult when I get traffic from both net control and the FRS to keep track of what I needed to write down. And I wasn't sure how people handle that, whether you mute the net control or how do you handle those kind of situations where you've got so much override?
Well, speaking for district control, I have the same problem when I'm talking to Jim or you, and then also dealing with trying to talk with Matt on the UUC. So when I was working with Matt and Jim called me on our UHF, I had to quickly go over and I would said, Harlow, this is net control standby 1. Just stand by. And then I go back and try to talk with Matt on the VHF, trying to figure out what's going on. And then I would come back to Jim. So you just have to tell the other person to stand by and then finish with what you're doing. If it's emergency wise, then you'll have to tell the person you're talking to stand by and take the emergency. But yeah, Jerry, you're muted.
I know I hit the space bar and I'm not muted. So what I did was I took a polling position. So if each level polls the level below them, then you won't get into the crosstalk as much.
Mm.
I don't understand what you meant by that. Could you clarify?
Sure. So when I, as district, was talking to the neighborhood ham, they don't talk unless I say, neighborhood ham Santa Clara 1. This is Northwest District 1. I'm ready for your transmission now. So that person would not call to me. They would wait for me to ask for their input.
Yeah, and that's something that goes with on like now for Northeast, where Mike and Chris and Jim and Evan, we're all on the same frequency, the UHF, so we're all talking. So I'm hearing all this, their talk going back and forth. So that kind of adds a little confusion. And then if you're like Chris, then he's talking on the FRS radio at the same time. So yes, Lena.
Yeah, I had to go back and forth quite a bit. And one of the issues we had, I was monitoring our ham simplex for the neighborhood. And I was also monitoring the FRS channel as well. But we had like one person on ham that wasn't able to hear net control transmissions. And so that created a lot of doubling that was happening, because I would be taking a report and then he wouldn't be able to hear that I was taking a report, and he wasn't also hearing me say to stand by. So that got to be a little messy. But also with the emergency priorities, like trying to prioritize what's going through. We had a scribe who was writing things down. And like when we'd hear things like spurting blood or whatever, we'd make sure that 213 got passed right away over to Craig so he could report it up. And the other one was like being able to know, like somebody would be, I'd have somebody stand by, but they actually had a more urgent message to come through. And so just having a way to say, can you stand by, and then say, have them respond in some way to know that it's urgent traffic or emergency traffic.
Yeah.
I'm sure how to handle that.
If in the way I would do that, if you're working on emergency traffic with the spurting blood, and somebody else calls in, my recommendation would be, say you're working with quad 2, quad 3 calls in and says, net control, this is quad 3 with emergency traffic. Just say it just like that. Don't even. And then that way, yeah.
So to clarify, so the team calling in would initiate their response with like a priority level of their message, instead of just saying, assessment to report, because they would say assessment to report, and I'd say stand by. And then when I come back and get the message, it's like, oh my God,
So they should say like net control emergency traffic or something like that.
Yeah. So the way we used to do this in the 60s on ham radio was a triplet. So if you ever heard break, 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 or CQ, 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 that meant it was higher priority.
Yeah, and we don't want to go that way. Okay, so just if you're talking, if the other person's called in and they just say net control, this is so-and-so, that's saying that they don't have anything important. But if quad 2 causes net control, this is quad 2 with emergency traffic, that says this is important. But if it just net control, this is quad 2, they've got nothing. Net control can always go back and say, quad 1, I'll take your emergency and priority traffic now if you have it. something like that. So, but yeah, if you've got emergency and you're talking with somebody else and quad 2 can hear that you're having conversation, whenever quad 2 can break in, they just say net control, this is quad 2 with emergency traffic. And then the net control is supposed to, okay, quad 1, stand by. Quad 2, go ahead with your emergency traffic. Yeah, Craig.
So the folks that are passing the 213s to me would do exactly what Lena said. And I would have a 213 with some emergency traffic ready to go on top of my other lower priority ones. But then I don't know if Gary, if you're using a single radio, when you're talking to the EOC folks on different frequency, I had no way to really break into you to pass an emergency up to you at that stage. So I'm not sure if we have any other ideas about how to deal with that.
Well, of course, this is an exercise, so I just noted whether it's an emergency or urgent. But the reality is, in an emergency like this, 1 or 2 minutes isn't the problem. The problem is going to be hours. In other words, okay, we have an emergency message, we have an urgent message, we have a this message and a that message, but the only way help's going to get here is through the EOC in theory, and they, they're not going to have people sitting around waiting to send out an ambulance. They're going to.
So if within the neighborhood we know of resources, medical training, then we should try to maybe direct them to help respond to some of that, I suppose.
Well, so let's think of what might not fall into that category. What would be a true emergency? Railroad car on fire, or something.
Okay, so there's an issue of identifying which are the emergencies that are significant from the city level thing, but then the other issue is, I guess I would just wait till you get back to me, and then I would pass that emergency thing on when you get back to me, I guess.
Yeah, in my case, my situation, I knew I'd only be gone for 2 or 3 minutes, and so I tried to keep you informed.
Yeah,
So and
that was good. Yeah.
So you're not sitting around waiting, and so I think the trick is just for you and me to communicate.
Yeah, I guess from the point of view of we're talking a few minutes more or less, probably won't make any difference in the end for these particular things. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, Judy.
So I had this question during the exercise on emergency, priority, and routine. First of all, are we supposed to say what each one is, like routine, message, or priority, or emergency? Or do we just do emergencies and that break in?
Well, when you do your ICS 213s, of course, I guess from the damage assessment reports, a lot of them were kind of emergency cases, but in real life, and you're a radio team leader, you may have some routine messages like, we need a couple more blankets or something like that, or we need some more TP, toilet paper, or things like that. So, you have to, so when you, in this case, you try to discern from the damage assessment form, what category does it fall into? Is it a priority? Is the person kind of actually awake and walking around? He's just a little, if he's awake, the person is awake and walk around and is okay, then it may be a routine, or, that could be a routine. So yeah, you try to discern from what you got where it would fall. And that could be different with each one of you and with each of your damage assessment forms determined. So not everybody's going to rate or grade a picture or a damage assessment form exactly the same.
Right.
But we try to train to that. Yes.
And I took in reading the definitions of what's emergency and priority, none of mine were emergencies, and I think even the priorities in the long run aren't going to be addressed anyway, because maybe I had some guy with spurting blood, but there are probably 1,000 people with spurting blood at that moment. So
Right.
if we don't take care of him, he's going to go. So that's what I'm
Right.
saying. Like, how I wouldn't really call that an emergency, and maybe not even a priority, because I know he's just one person out of, and then I think emergency of as if there's a riot or like something that the police really had to come take care of. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yeah, and if the damage assessment team, as they go around and do the survey and they come across a person that's spurting blood, they're not trained to actually administer aid. But if
Right.
there's a CERT if there's a CERT that's in the neighborhood, that CERT has had training on how to stop the bleed. And
Right.
should, as a damage assessment team and has a radio, I would call back to the radio team leader that may be the CERT and say,
Oh,
there's a
I
person here spurting blood. And
Uh-huh.
so that CERT could go and minister first aid and do a stop the bleed on that person so it doesn't bleed out. I think
And
you
then you
bleed
would
out
put-
with it.
And
Yeah,
then you would
bleed-
say, like, in your message to the ham, that a CERT is taking care of that or whatever.
Yeah, you wouldn't even have to say that. There was, I know there was a couple messages where the person was unconscious, and then it went on to say, and the person doesn't react to pounding on the door or yelling at. Well, if the person's unconscious, it is not going to react. So that was, something like that didn't really. It was kind of wordy in the message, but in the 213 on that. So, but yeah, you can, if you're going to send to a message up, say, found a victim leg spurting blood, stop, called CERT to render aid, stop. That's it. I wouldn't do anything else. So something like that. Yeah, Lena.
So thinking about handling messages, like we have some, so the 213s that we were filling out were the ones that were from the damage assessment teams that were the traffic moved on up the chain. And then there are other things that were being dealt with at the neighborhood level that we didn't write up in 213s. They were logistical things that needed to be handled. People not able, we had a radio operator that lost their damage assessment team, was not able to contact them. And so we had to do a bunch of work around that. So as far as documenting those messages, do we have like also an ongoing, like a 214 activity log where, or is that kind of thing going in a 213 where we're resolving a situation, sending a runner? One time we had to send a runner.
I don't know if I would generate a 213 to go to EOC to let them know that.
No, it's not going to go to, I wouldn't think that would go. That wouldn't go on to the EOC. That's just I'm just talking about things being handled at the
internally.
The internal documentation for incident traffic.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't put that on the message log at all, or on a 213.
No.
The log is what's is actually going out or coming in, or something like that. Internal stuff, it's a good question. I guess you could have another log for just internal. If you're calling so-and-so, can you check on assessment team 3? I haven't had any contact with them. I don't know where they're at. So
we do kind of, we try to use a 214 activity log, like when we do our general monthly check-ins, and sometimes that'll be like, we may have like the time, like we'll have some of the people and resources. The 205, I think, is interesting to use for the radio plan and the frequencies. That's kind of helpful. But, we might have in there like the time and like, ground crew setup, or, initiate open net communication on this frequency, and report check-in or quarterly to check-in, or just have like a summary type of thing.
Uh,
I don't know if that's useful or. kind of
Well,
what we
I
did
like
with
the idea of
Bratwurst.
using the 214 to, like, if you send a runner, we should write down we sent a runner, so remember to see if they're still alive later, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah, that's kind of things like that.
Yeah.
Like at the time, it's like sent a runner to here.
So the 214 is a place to do that. That kind of makes sense.
yeah.
I want to speak real quick about timing and message numbering. Working with Matt, he isn't interested in any of that as far as it. For him, a message has his number on it, and it's the number that came in. He also records the district that it came from. So his numbers are Southeast 2, number 9, Southeast 2, number 10, Southeast 2, number 11. And so when you're passing what I realize is really each group and each level is going to have their own numbering system. And so we really don't need to pass that on. It's for our own information primarily.
I like the thing that Jerry suggested, though, where the numbers at an early stage are consistent and follow through. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So I had 3 messages from the Whitaker before I sent any messages from Fan. And so my message numbering started for Fan, it started at message 4. And when I reported it to Matt, it became Southeast SE2 number 4. Even though it was, in this case, it was the most urgent message that Craig had at the time. It was his message number 4. Became my message. Became SE2 number 4. But then SE2 number, Craig's first message number 1 became my message SE2 number 5. Because of the priority placed on number 4, on Craig's message number 4. So, I just think the message numbering is going to be different at each level, and I know Matt certainly wasn't interested in any of my numbers. He just told me, okay, that's.
Hang on there, Lena. Just one.
But I did keep a time on everything, and the time runs through the system. So if you can remember when you received a message, if you write that down, that helps.
Before Lena comes with her question there,
Answer.
how many of you used the radio logs? Did you use radio logs? Did you? So the radio logs, the time that you put on a log, more than likely is not going to match the time it's on the ICS 213, correct? Because that log, that time on the log is the time that you sent it. So it's not going to match whatever the time was that was indicated on the 213. So they're not going to match. So I just want to point that out. Yeah, Lena.
Our 213 should have both. We have the report time it's called in, and then when that's called in, I give them their number and their time of report. And so my thinking is the number comes from the top. Like Craig wouldn't need to give Gary any numbers. Like he'll have like log what time, Gary can log what time the call was, but Gary could give him your number 7, like Southeast 2-7 time or whatever. Because I know for us having that numbering system of knowing where that came from, what number it was, because we had questions on some that we had to go back and reconcile and try to make sense of what it was. And by knowing the message number, we're able to match that up and reconcile. So if it comes from the top down, so you'd be able to go back and get the information from the source if you needed it.
Yeah, I will know the EOC number because I am handling all of Southeast too. So Craig, I could have given you the number that I knew Matt was going to assign on each of these, knowing what order I was going to be recording them.
Yeah, well, if you know that in advance, without having to wait for Matt to, give another transaction, then it would be good if we had some way to track things back, because for today's exercise, it's pretty much a one directional thing. But if you're doing real stuff, there's, I'm sure, going to be follow-up questions or responses and all kinds of things where you like to track it back to the source. So we should resolve that somehow.
Yeah. And maybe Craig could just give whoever, just give your number. I mean, so each person would have like 2 sets.
And what Craig's talking about, you could have a EOC send a message back saying to somebody saying, we have transportation on the way for the person with the spurting blood coming out of his leg or something like that. So you could have a message coming back that way. So anything we can do better for the 29th? The 29th, we're going to use pictures.
Well, there's a thing that I know we could have done better within the fan group, which is when we're getting started, we kind of forgot to do the thing where while everyone's still grouped up to do a comm check. And so we end up with people, dispersed all over, heck and gone, and then discovering we had to go fix some problems. So that was a good reminder that, yeah, that's a basic step that we needed to do that we forgot to do. So that was on us.
I'd like to get clarification on something really quick.
Sure.
So the person transmitting to me the general message that I am acting a link for them to the neighborhood ham radio person, is it their job or my job to concentrate the message down into a smaller, simpler version, or is it each individual's job to make that decision?
If you're in a relay position, that's the position that you're in. And the same thing for the ham radio operators, they are relays. It's not your job. The job for the making the ICS form message being accurate, brief, concise is on them. They're the ones that start the ICS message. So that's where
can you clarify who them are?
The person that initiates the message.
Okay.
So as relay, you were relaying for
Judy and Karen.
Yeah, and Russet. So
Russet
those, so those ICS messages coming from them, they're the ones that initiate it. All you do is pass it through.
Okay.
So that and with more training, we'll get better at drilling those things, wording this down to just little bullet type stuff of putting the information. And it takes time. It takes practice because we like to explain things. And so it just takes practice. Thea, I see your hand.
Oh, yes, Andy, thank you. With the yard signs, we will have locations. We didn't have locations on the damages in the envelopes today. And some initial reports were including dreaming up, or one woman put her own address in there. And I was urging them not to use their own address or any real address in our neighborhood. We had, child care centers damaged and children dying and all this stuff. And I didn't want any real addresses put in there. So I just wanted to know if locations were overlooked in the damages handed out, or if we weren't supposed to send any, or we were supposed to come up with our own.
You could come up with your own, make up an address. I know there was a couple times I was going back trying to find, what location is this other than Lariat? We drill down to get a better definitive point. So that's something that we can work on, make up something, just put an address there. You could put that in for, in the subject line of the ICS, you can, subject line, you could put whatever the address is.
Yeah, we had definitely discussed how address or location was very important.
Yes.
But also during drills, maybe not to use your actual neighborhood address or location
Yeah.
address.
Yeah, you don't have to use a real, if we use the signs that we put in the yard, I don't know if you use that person's address that the sign was in or not, but you can make one up. Just, it just make up a address. It doesn't matter, but it does.
The signs, they were so atypical of anything in our neighborhood. It was really no problem that somebody might overhear there was a train wreck on Adams Street.
Yeah.
But with some of these other things, today it was quite disturbing. And we actually had a lot of children playing right next to us at a birthday party, and didn't really want to use some of those really bad injury
Well, you just have to
messages.
say exercise, exercise, exercise. That's all.
Right.
Okay, anything else? How can we prove? Okay, Judy. You're muted, Judy. Oh, there we go.
I had a question about the exercise. You don't have to do that every time you speak, correct? Just enough.
You're supposed
so
to,
that-
yeah, and I messed up. I didn't do it all the time as well. Sometimes I said it at the end. It's important that you say it's at the beginning of your message, so that if somebody just happens to tune in, they can hear. Of course, if they tune in and they didn't hear you say exercise, but then if you said at the end, that when you finish, then they would understand, oh, okay, it's an exercise.
Okay.
So that's the reason why we put it in there, that when you send over a message that you bookend it with exercise.
Okay. Thank you.
Lena.
I had another question on clarifying the 213. So when there was one message that it made no sense at all. And I asked some clarifying questions for the 213, because to send it as written would be, it needed some additional information. So in taking those reports, like at the neighborhood level, where somebody's calling in with the damage assessment, it seems like that would be appropriate. Like, rather than sending a message that makes no sense, to ask a clarifying question. So maybe the 213 might be modified from like the field, what they said, or do you have them make a correction on their 213 so they match? Or like get an agreed upon message?
Sure, that's a good question. Probably, I would have them make, I guess, make the correction. I don't know. What do you think, folks?
Well, my thought on that would be coach them to make it better, and then have them, like I say, have them fix it. Otherwise, my thought would be, if someone has to change it along the way, then they should change the signature, say they're the originator, is one way to do it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if a friendly amendment or a friendly like suggested revision. Yeah.
All right. Thea's got her hand up.
It's a minor point, but I went back and changed our instructions after I saw, at first you said exercise, exercise, exercise. And then the second time around, the phrase was, this is an exercise. And I think that comes more normally and naturally to people, to say this is an exercise rather than saying the three words. So I just wanted to know if you were aware that the instructions had changed along the way, and which one might be preferable.
I probably should take a look at that and see which one, what I did wrong on that. So I think the words, this is an exercise, is better than going exercise, but
It's easier to say.
yeah, that's true.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments on what can be approved and what, as we look towards October or situation? Seems like everybody had a good comms except for me. So I'm going to take my meter and go back up there and see what I can look around. And so if anybody is happen to be on your radios this afternoon, I may call. But
Hey, Andy, do you have an antenna analyzer or anything like that?
no, I don't. I got a multimeter. I may go up and like I said, one of the radios had no power. It would not even power up.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, this was powered up not too long ago. Why is it not powering up now?
Well, if you get past that and you still have some troubles, seeing some of us have some stuff we could hook and check the coax and things like that.
That'd be good. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you all very much. I hope you had fun.
Andy?
Great, thank you.
Andy,
yeah.
could I say something?
Sure. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
want to give credit to Deb Jones for helping Friendly area have 21 people turn out for
Awesome.
our drill today. And don't tell Parks and Rec because we were only supposed to have 20. We're really pleased with our turnout. We did have a lot of new people coming on that we hadn't expected, that really hadn't had much training. And I'm going to suggest that we start at least a half an hour earlier than the 10 o'clock and do more orientation and training and instructions, as well as our radio checks, which we had planned to do. They just got forgotten in the scrimmage. So,
well, that happens. Just think if it was a real emergency, a lot of things go out of your head you don't think about. I saw Ken, he had from Lake Ridge, he had his hand up if he has a question. Ken?
Negative, I don't have a question. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Ken. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your day.
All
thank
right.
you.
Thanks.
See you in October.
We'll see you in October.